Other questions? Obviously not those questions. I mean, I'm glad to hear Drew use a word you don't hear very often in this country, free. And it's important in the context of BIM. And I say the BIM work group is doing a lot of work on trying to ensure the suppliers can provide good deals in these very difficult times. I think we're making some progress. I see Catherine Megan there nodding. So it's a four-letter word, free, is a very good word to have at the moment. So questions for Drew, obviously not for me. I couldn't answer any questions. Everybody is baffled. We have somebody here. There's a question here.
Hi, I'm Colin Saul from JV Tierney. Drew, you mentioned there, you just touched on the timetable for delivery of the rollout of the various libraries, and you mentioned MEP, we're coming from an MEP perspective. Can you give a little bit more detail on when you think that would? You mentioned a month-on-month rollout for the various staged delivery of the libraries. What we find at the moment is we were getting into a very labour-intensive generating our own components from, if you like, first principles, and not having a central database available down to very simple components, switches, sockets, that kind of stuff, and it's proving very labour intensive from our point of view to actually. So I'd be a little bit concerned that the architectural side might be getting a little bit more advanced, but the MEP needs to be in tune with that to ensure that projects can be delivered in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I think as I say, the first and second phase are very much the architectural elements, but we're certainly in discussion now with M&E consultants to review what's available in the different software platforms, see what's missing, and try and get a feel of what's required for a library there. But it's worth noting that the development of the generic library, we're not waiting for that to get to a certain point before we start developing the manufacturer's library. So we are talking to manufacturers now about them developing their libraries as well. So maybe the case that you get MEP libraries developing from manufacturers' point of view quicker than what the generic library is. I would agree. Yeah, but I think it was important that we did develop and deliver the architectural side, sort of the major building elements sort of first, and then there is a program of how we're going to do that. As I say, I think personally the manufacturers' libraries, the MBS have got a lot of interest already from different manufacturers around the country. Some of those from Ireland, in all fields, architecture and MEP already.
Any other questions? There's one here and one in the back. I'm going to take this one first, and then there's a question in the back over there. These are probably the last two questions. Was there? No? Question here then. You were asking a question, yeah?
Drew, I just wanted to ask if you could speak a little bit about what's emerging in terms of coding of objects in the UK. Currently, the codes that are used by architects for NBS specification clauses, there's no link between that and what quantity surveyors are using for their estimating. Will you be thinking about a common coding system that crosses all disciplines?
Well, certainly the library that we're developing is based upon the new Uniclass code and the MBS specification, the new tool, the MBS Create, that is based upon the new Uniclass code as well. So all the components will have that information within them. But you're right, whether that then ties up with the quantity surveyors code, I think is probably another area that needs developed, which is why it's important to remember that this is a maintained and developing library. That some of the feedback that we might get when we first put it out there is that it needs to have that logical link for quantity surveyors to be able to code from, to do the takeoffs from. Well, the course has been updated in line with the new Uniclass. So when the the cores that you recognise in MBS now, so your F10 for brickwork and things like that, that won't exist anymore. The way that, and I didn't sort of go into this any further, but the MBS Create now is going to be it's a specification tool that's built around systems rather than individual components. So you will, for example, you'll specify an external wall as a system, which is made up of components, and then that whole wall will have a unique code. So the coding that we've employed within the library reflects the MBS Create coding. So this is why we say that if you read up on the MBS Create on the MBS website, it's very much built around BIM, it's built around systems rather than individual components.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes left for questions. Anybody else wants to ask something? Just back there. Just maybe get a mic to you. You can see why MBS employs 130 people. It's obviously a massive task, a massive organisation.
Yeah.
Hi, Drew. Tom Regan from John Halligan Architects. I'm just wondering, when you import an IFC component into one software, how editable is it then when it's imported into another software? So, for example, you model a door type in AutoCAD Revit, and then that might be coming from the architects, and that's imported then for use with the engineer or another professional. Is it going to have all the same parameters and be equally editable by the new software?
No, I mean, that's exactly the problem that we're finding, is that the IFC format for components like doors, windows, sanitary ware and things like that isn't really transportable for components. So we've used the IFC format to author systems, but our deliverables for the library will be a door family in all of the various platforms. Certainly when you do your IFC export of a building model from Revit to AutoCAD, the components come through as fixed components, but they should still maintain the data. But the geometry is fixed. It loses the opportunity to flex.
And just one other question based on the last comment you had. By using the Uniclass system, if you're going to stop using, say, the F10 for brickwork or, say, L10 for windows, doors,
yeah,
and you start defining systems, what happens if you want to design a system that's non-standard? How do you get to actually specify that using the Uniclass system?
I'm not too sure on that one. I think you've caught us out on that one.
That sounds like a good question.
But I shall look into the answer and come back to you. I'm not too sure.
I think this will be the last question. We'll go into the workshops then. Thanks.
Hello, Stephanie Borms, Cabinet Hute Architects. The ASC BIM standards actually recommend 3 grades of parts with regards to the complexity of those parts. Are you taking this into account anywhere, or is it basically your national library will have the very basic first grade, and then the manufacturer's library will have kind of 3rd grade? Is there any facilitation of grade 2 in there? Or?
Yeah, this has been an interesting discussion on the LinkedIn National BIM Library site. Stephen Hamill, the Director of Design and Innovation from the MBS, he posted that same question up on the site for discussion. We're now authoring sanitary ware currently, so we're going through that process now, and I think we're going to be looking at sort of level 2 as described in the AEC UK BIM standard, sort of components. We won't be going into the very detailed level 3. That would be more manufacturer's level of information.
Thanks, Drew. It's 9 o'clock now.